Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm very good, Brian. We're approaching the first Saturday in March. 2 months till the Derby. Things are heating up.
I like how you did that, sir. The first Saturday in March. 2 months away, Kentucky Derby. That's what we're talking about today, Matt, here on HorseCenter. Kentucky Derby top 10s. We're going to go down our lists, see where they are now, and see where they might be changing very quickly, because I think things are going to happen here in the next few weeks. We're also going to do a little Fountain of Youth preview, but that's later in the show, Matt. Let's talk about our top 10s. Who do you have at number one?
Same as it has been, Brian, since we started doing top 10s in January. I still have Good Magic in number one.
Matt, it's like this is our first top 10 ever, as far as I'm concerned. I'm jumping head first in, and I'm going to say no to you. Good Magic is not number one. He shouldn't be number one. He shouldn't have been the 2-year-old champion. Matt, he only won one race.
Yes, Brian. Yes, Brian, but we know we disagree on this one.
It was a good one. It was a good one. Good Magic. But Bolt Doro is my number one, Matt. Boom, he went in his maiden race, Del Mar Futurity, and the front runner was a monster performance, Matt. Remember the front runner. Who was second in the front runner, by the way, a pole back? It was Solomini, who I think we both are going to talk about on our list. So Bolt Doro, trouble in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He's my number one. The good news, sir, is both of them are coming back in about the next 11 days or so.
Finally. Yes, finally. I'm getting a little restless on the Derby trail. It's time for us to see if these two that we have been touting for so long are going to live up to their 2-year-old form.
Touting with good reason, Matt. Who else are we going to tout? Because there's really no horse that has completely stepped up. There's interest out there down our list, I guess, starting at 3 down. But I have Bolt Doro 1, Good Magic 2. You have Good Magic 1, Bolt Doro 2. And for good reason. They were top-notch 2-year-olds. They proved it on several occasions. Good Magic, obviously only that one win, but 2 strong seconds to start his career, and then an impressive win going out west at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Let's start talking about some of the other horses, though, Matt. McKinsey is my number 3. Where is he on your list?
I have McKinsey at number 3 also. And you know, I kind of agree with what you were saying before. Once we get below those 2, there's a lot of horses that, have shown us something good. But I don't know, we're not overly excited about, and McKinsey is one of them. I like things that I saw earlier in 2018 from McKinsey, so I have him at number 3. But I don't think he's as good as Good Magic and Bolt Doro if they come back running.
Well, we might find out very soon, because Bob Baffert has a couple of experienced 3-year-olds that are both high on our list here. McKinsey, number 3 on both of our lists. Also Solomini, who will be high on our lists as well. Baffert has both. It looks like one of them will face Bolt Doro March the 10th at Santa Anita in the San Felipe. Bolt Doro's first race back since the Breeders' Cup. So either way, maybe especially if it's McKinsey, since McKinsey is quite highly thought of out there. Now, we said originally when we saw the sham there wasn't much in there. I'm not necessarily going to jump off that statement, but my boy Jack did come back to win nicely. Does that raise up McKinsey at all in your eyes?
I don't think that makes a difference to me now. And like we talked about last week with my boy Jack's performance on that muddy track, we're going to have to wait and see. If my boy Jack comes back and runs another good one, then I think that makes a difference.
Fair enough. All right, I've already talked about the other Baffert high on this list, and that's Solomini, and that's a horse I'm very interested in. Certainly he wasn't the best 2-year-old. He was beaten Pretty soundly by Boldoro in the front runner, and then certainly pretty soundly by Good Magic in the Breeders' Cup. He was second in both, but he looks like a horse, Matt, who has potential to get better as he gets older and more physically mature. We haven't seen him since the Los Al Futurity, and dare I say he was the rightful winner of that Los Al Futurity that included McKinsey and Instilled Regard. Of course, he was taken down. Doesn't change my feelings for him, and he'll be back soon too. So a horse I'm really looking forward to coming back, Solomini, and that is the Zayat stable of American Pharaoh fame. Where does Solomini fall on your list, Matt?
I have Solomini at number 5, and you have Solomini at number 4. I like the way Solomini is a good, solid horse. I like the way he competes. I think he's got a nose for the wire, and he likes to win. But, you know, I wasn't wowed by any of his races. And like you said, he's a horse that I think is going to need to advance and get better. And this is the time of the year right now when these horses have to start showing whether they are going to get better and be really legitimate Derby contenders.
It's moving time, Matt. I want to know about your number 4 horse now, because I have a feeling it's a horse that has already proven something at 3.
Yeah, my number 4 horse is Audible, and I think he is exactly what I was just talking about. I think he is a horse, obviously, that made a big jump up with his very impressive performance in the Holy Bull. I think he's a horse that's improving. I think he's a horse that's going to keep improving. His next test is right now scheduled to be in the Florida Derby for Todd Pletcher, just like Pletcher did with Always Dreaming last year.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about that. It worked last year. It was a sloppy Kentucky Derby. I don't know if that helped Always Dreaming have enough to go the Derby distance and beat a field of 20. But I'm a little worried that Audible will only have one more race. They're very spread out. The Florida Derby will be the same track that obviously he likes, kind of a speed favoring track down there at Gulfstream Park. So Audible, you know, I have him well up on my list as well because his recent performance in the Holy Bull was nothing but impressive. I have him down at 6, though, Matt, so a little bit lower than you. And we'll see. We'll see in the Florida Derby. I think if the Florida Derby isn't as good as his last race, then Pletcher's really behind the 8 ball with him because he's spread out these races so much. My number 5, and probably I'm holding on doggedly tooth and nail here to a horse that very well may not even make the Derby. But the best performance I've seen by any 3-year-old this year, the one that impressed me the most, I guess physically, the eye test, and a little bit of even who are the horses he was beating behind him, was Mask. And Mask, of course, won the early Mucho Macho Man very impressively. It was only a second race of his life. I love what I see from Mask. But at number 5, I really don't have much confidence as far as how quickly he'll be back and if he can make the Derby even. So Mask stays on my list, might be numbered if he doesn't come back soon.
Yeah, Brian, he's a Chad Brown runner, and Chad is very careful and cautious with his horses, and I mean, you have reason to concern with Mask. He has not had a timed workout since January 20th, and it's just this week that I dropped Mask out of my top 10s, and I had him up fairly high also, but it's just because at this point I'm really concerned, and knowing the way Chad Brown is, that I don't see him making the Derby field.
Good chance he won't. I'm holding out hope. We'll see, but definitely behind the 8 ball there, Mask and Chad Brown. We'll need to see him return to the work tab quickly and then get in one more really good prep for the Derby, but there is still time. So that was the first horse that only one of us had on our list. Who is your number 6, Matt? We're down to 6 because that's where I had Audible.
Yeah, this lower half of my top 10, I decided to shake things up a little bit and put in horses that I thought have the potential to move on and move ahead. And I kind of took out some of the horses who maybe won a Derby prep, but wasn't wowed by them. So in that theme, at number 6, I have Sporting Chance, who is coming from D. Wayne Lucas, ran a really good race in the Southwest off of that long layout, had a troubled trip. This is a horse that I think is going to get better in his next start, which is scheduled to be the Rebel and heading down the Derby Trail to Churchill Downs.
A son of Tisnow, D. Wayne Lucas. I like him, Matt. I like him as well. 6 is a bit high for my taste. I'm actually dropping him down, or I have him down a little bit lower on my list, down near the end of my top 10. But yeah, Sporting Chance sure looks like a horse who can come back with an improved performance last time. Banged around a little bit in the stretch at Oaklawn Park, muddy track. First race, he had the longest layoff of just about any of these horses because he hadn't run since the hopeful in late summer at Saratoga. So all in all, it was a good performance to be third that day. Moving forward, Lucas will give him every opportunity, as he always does. It looks like he will be Rebel bound next. And yeah, Sporting Chance, certainly a horse who I look forward to seeing. My top 10 is still a little bit more on what they've done in 2018, save the top 2 because those 2 were just heads and tails above the rest for me. But number 7, hard for me not to have Avery Island on my list. And this is a horse you usually like, the Kieran McLaughlin runner who's thrown in some nice races. His last 4 races, he won the Maiden nicely, he won the Nashua nicely, second in the Remsen to Catholic Boy, and then a good return win certainly at Aqueduct. So Avery Island for me, a son of street sense. I think he can handle 10 furlongs. I'm not sure if he's as good as some above him, but hard for me not to include him at number 7.
And that's really fair, Brian. And like I said, I just got a little restless with my top 10. Avery Island, has got a good resume and has got a good pedigree. Kieran is next pointing to the Louisiana Derby with this horse.
By the way, Matt, on our top 10 lists and the horses that didn't make our top 10 lists, there's a lot of horses pointing towards that Louisiana Derby. I believe it's the end of March, so that should be interesting down in New Orleans. So he's my number 7, Matt. Who is your number 7? Are we going international here?
We are. I mean, you turned me on to Goldtown last week, and I'm going with him. I just love the way the race looked. I know these horses from over in Dubai have not fared well in the Derby when they get to Churchill Downs, but I just loved the way this horse moved. I loved the way he was on the lead, turned away horses that put pressure on him, and just had a really impressive turn of foot down the stretch. Those are all qualities that make for a successful Kentucky Derby horse. Being able to get out, stay out of trouble, and coming around that turn at Churchill Downs, you gotta have some turn of foot to try and get some separation. I like that about Goldtown. I like all those qualities in Goldtown. Of course, he's gonna have to improve, and that race is not enough, but I put him at number 7 because I like what I saw from him.
You know, I like this new top 10 of yours because a lot of my fantasy horses are on your top 10 list. Sporting Chance, Goldtown, and more coming. So it's nice to see that you have confidence in my fantasy team. As for Goldtown, a gelded son of a Street Cry, so we know the breeding's there. We know the ability to move forward in distance is there, and we'll see him going about a mile 3/16 next in the UAE Derby, where he may very well face Mendelssohn, who was a strong winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, a strong addition of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and Mendelssohn's due back over in Europe this week, and then probably pointing for a matchup with Goldtown in Dubai at the end of the month of March. So interesting. All right, Matt, I went back to Coach D. Wayne. I went with Bravazzo as my number 8, and I'll tell you why. The 2 races this year, obviously Lucas has gotten horses improving as 3-year-olds over the years. We've seen it for decades now, where they just get better at 3 after racing quite a bit at 2. He runs his horses into improvement and maturity, and Bravazzo seems to be a horse like that. It reminds me a little bit of Oxbow with a fair amount of early pace, a son of Awesome Again for Calumet Farm. And I like his 2 races. He nice allowance. He beat a good colt at Oaklawn Park, where they were well ahead of the rest. And then nothing wrong with that Risen Star, where he stalked and pounced and got the win in a decent edition of the Risen Star. So for that reason, Bravazzo, again, part of this is accomplishments this year, but Bravazzo is a horse to watch for me and deserving of a spot in my top 10 at number 8.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I like you said, it was a really nice performance in the Risen Star. It was a good field in there, beating some horses that a lot of people liked and had high on their list. And like you said, D. Wayne Lucas, it's a great story. 82-year-old, 4-time Kentucky Derby winner. He knows how to get it done. He's had somewhat success, so Bravazzo is a horse that, is worth being on your list. You have him at number 8. On my number 8, the rest of my list is continuing with my theme of horses that I think could jump up and be good. I got Justify in there, that Bob Baffert runner that just was phenomenal in his 7-furlong debut just a few weeks ago. Baffert is looking to make the jump up to the Derby Trail, maybe in the Sunland Derby at the end of March.
Absolutely. Baffert has a lot of bullets in the holster right now, Matt, so he's got to spread out his horses. It makes sense for Justify to go to Sunland. It's a 9-furlong race in late March. There's some good money, and there's Derby points there. Probably face a lighter field than he would see in Southern California or Oaklawn, as he has McKinsey and Solomini pointing for those spots. So, yeah, Justify makes sense. Be interesting to see him stretch out from that sprint all the way to 9 furlongs, but unless there's some other good horses in there, he may dominate that one as well, and I'll be forced at that point to put him into my top 10, because obviously the maiden race was huge. Middle of February, or even shade past the middle of February for a debut, is tough. That's the only reason I don't have him in my top 10 yet. He's never faced winners. But obviously the potential is there. So Justify at number 8, certainly an interesting horse. Number 9 on my list is a horse we've already talked about quite a bit, Sporting Chance for D. Wayne Lucas, hoping he moves forward in the Rebel and probably the Arkansas Derby in his next 2 spots. Your number 9 is a horse that I really have my eye on, and he's by the same sire as Solomini, and that's Curlin. Your number 9, Matt, is...
I have Vino Rosso in my number 9 spot. I'm going Pletcher in my last 2 spots. A lot of people like the performance of Vino Rosso when he finished 3rd in the Sam F. Davis. Again, I think this is a horse that I think could be getting better and will continue to improve, as is Pletcher's MO on the Derby Trail. They have him going to run next in the Tampa Bay Derby, which is coming up on March 10th, I think. So we'll know more soon.
Yeah, and I like the way he finished off. Seemed like he was going nowhere fast for a while in the stretch, but he looked like a horse with long legs and a lot of talent and just learning how to run. And I like the way he finished off at Sam F. Davis. He was 3rd that day, but certainly looks like a horse who should only get better with more racing. And Matt, my number 10 and your number 10, I easily could have picked your horse as my number 10, because I'm kind of high on Magnum Moon's potential, a maiden winner at Gulfstream and an allowance winner at Tampa Bay Downs.
Yep, Magnum Moon is another one of the Pletchers, two for two. I think a horse that's going to get better. And again, this Magnum Moon, I think maybe they're going to be pointing towards the Rebel with this one, where The water's going to get a lot deeper, and we'll see what we have from Magnum Moon. Brian, I see your number 10 is Flame Away, and hey, that's a horse that I have so much respect for after his Sam F. Davis and his versatile record.
I couldn't resist putting him in the number 10. Our top 10s, especially the bottom of our top 10s, are a slightly different framework or thought work there, Matt. I went with more what have you already done, where you went more with potential. Both ways are fine. Flame Away deserves to be, if the season ended today, Flame Away would be even higher than 10 as far as the best 3-year-olds in the country. He's a multiple stakes winner, as we know, different distances, different surfaces. And he showed a heck of a lot of heart to beat good horses at Tampa Bay in the Sam F. Davis. So had to put Flame Away in there, but going forward a mile and a quarter Churchill, I'm not so sure. Matt, we had 6 horses on our top 10 lists that were the same, that meaning we had 4 that were different on each list, meaning we had a total of 14 horses mentioned. And in those 14, we have a lot of the favorites for the Kentucky Derby, but there's also a long list of good 3-year-olds that certainly could pop up here in the next 2 months and could even become one of the Kentucky Derby favorites with a good prep or two. I'm just going to throw a few out there. And if you want to give me a couple words, literally a couple words on why you didn't put them in their top 10, that would be great. I think you already mentioned my boy Jack. You want to see a fast track for him. What about Catholic Boy? He was a horse high on your list earlier.
He was. Again, I was just looking for horses that might be on the improve. I don't know. I just was not very happy with his last performance. So he may bounce back and come out running big. And if he does, that's terrific. We were talking about our fantasy teams. I've got him on mine, so I'd be really happy with that.
That's more than a few words.
Oh,
Catholic Boy certainly could jump back onto our top 10s next week, or a little over a week. I believe the Tampa Bay Derby's next, or is he going to Louisiana? I'm confused with Catholic Boy now. But either way, certainly a horse who easily could jump back on our list. Free Drop Billy.
Free Drop Billy. Going to be in the Fountain of Youth. And it'll be interesting to see. This is a horse who has been running against the best horses in this division almost his entire career.
Audible smoked him a little bit last time, so I want to see improvement this time. But yeah, another horse who easily could be on our list. Mendelssohn. I didn't include him in the top 10 because he hasn't run that yet this year, and he's on the wrong continent or two, probably running in England and Dubai.
He was one of my early picks. He's on my fantasy Triple Crown team. He's scheduled to run Friday in Ireland on an artificial surface in preparation for the UAE Derby. So we'll again, as we've been saying, we'll find out soon if Mendelssohn is going to be a serious threat when he gets onto these non-grass surfaces. And I still feel like he's a dangerous horse on the Derby Trail.
Beholder's little brother. Firenze Fire, Matt. Firenze Fire is just not a 10 furlong horse?
That could be the case. Got a lot of Derby points already. A game, really good horse, homebred, great story. Love to own him, but I don't see him being a threat on the Derby Trail.
Instilled Regard is not on either of our top 10s, man.
And Instilled Regard was high on our lists before the Risen Star, but he just didn't show up. So Hollendorfer's going to have to get him back together if he's going to be a factor.
Speed Track, he almost got up for third, although he wasn't really far back, wasn't making up a lot of ground. It wasn't an awful performance in the Risen Star, not as good as we expected. Still Regard, I still have my eye on. Strike Power.
Strike Power is going in the Fountain of Youth this weekend. The speedy Strike Power with the big speed figures in his start, and then came back in the swale, grade 3 at Gulfstream, going 7 furlongs. Super fast, super talented, inexperienced, got stuff to learn. Now being asked to go 2 turns, distance of ground, against very, very solid field. So this is a big test.
10 furlongs will be a big ask for this horse in just a few months, but obviously the talent is there. Whether it is one-turn talent, we're going to find out, and that's why I guess neither of us have him on the list. That's the same reason I don't have Kanthaka on my list as well, another Hollendorfer horse who I was happy to see win the San Vicente at 7 furlongs, but even his next prep is going to be 1 turn, so I don't know if he's a 10 furlong horse either.
Yeah, we shall see. But the one thing I like about Kanthaka is that he's shown that he can rate and come off of the pace, and I always like to see that.
Yeah, well, when horses battle 44 and flat, he better be able to come off the pace. Matt, I'm just going to throw out a few pretty big names out there that neither of us have on our list. You tell me if you want to say anything about them. I'm going to throw out a few here. Snapper Sinclair, Gravados, Nero, Lambo. Any thoughts on them, sir?
Well, again, there are so many names of horses that have done some stuff. Snapper Sinclair has, I guess at this point, certainly maybe it's fair to say, has overachieved after his really, really good performance in the Risen Star.
And of that list, I think Nero is a horse that I wouldn't surprise me to see pop up, especially once he starts going a distance of ground, another Bob Baffert training. All right, Matt, so we got our top 10s down. We got a long list of horses that we snubbed, that we didn't put in our list. At least we got mention of them and talked about them a little bit as well. This list can easily grow to 20 or 30, as you can tell, folks. Speaking of a bunch of them, we'll see a big return on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. It's the Fountain of Youth. Matt, the Fountain of Youth has become one of the bigger preps of the year, I think, especially in recent years, and certainly could play true in 2018 with the return of the 2-year-old champion, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, the son of Curlin. Good Magic leading the way. Strike Power brings speed. Free Drop Billy hopes to improve off a second place in the Holy Bull. And Marconi, that big son of Tappet, half brother to Mucho Macho Man, who seems to have a lot of late run among the names that we should see in Saturday's Fountain of Youth.
Yeah, it's not going to be a big field, but it's an interesting field. Good. All reports have Good Magic training really, really strongly, really smartly. I don't really have any concern about him not being ready to run. I think he'll be very close to 100% in here. Preparation from Chad Brown. He was flattered because the horse that he has been working with most of the time was Economic Model, who came back and ran a super, super big race to win the Howell's Hope at Gulfstream. That makes Good Magic's preparation seem even that better. It's a race that's going to be loaded with speed, Strike Power that you mentioned, and some of the others in there. Another horse that'll be interesting to watch in there is Gotta Go from the barn of Ian Wilkes, this son of Shanghai Bobby, a pretty dark gray horse with a very distinctive marking across one of his eyes. Ran some really nice races as a 2-year-old, in particular in the street sense, and in a race where he beat Bravazzo. This is a horse who he ran in the swale against Strike Power, making a nice closing move in there. So in a race that's going to have a lot of pace in there, I think he's in a good spot. Free Drop Billy that you mentioned, Marconi in there. Interesting race, everything in it. Pace for the closers to run into, good quality. I think we'll find out some things at Gulfstream on Saturday.
Absolutely, Matt. Good Magic. Yeah, Good Magic certainly has looked good in the mornings. Everything we saw at 2 was good. The breeding is good. And Chad Brown, let's face it, Chad Brown is a little bit opposite D. Wayne Lucas. I said earlier, D. Wayne Lucas races his horses into form, into improvement. Chad Brown has them ready to run generally first time out. So all signs are from a good performance from Good Magic. There are no superstars in the field below him, but there is a list of good horses, as Matt was alluding to there a little bit. Free Drop Billy, Strike Power, Marconi, Gotta Go. Some other Romans runners as well that have looked good. Dale Romans really is trying to get at least 1, 2, or 3 horses to the Kentucky Derby, and he may have as many as 3 in the Fountain of Youth. Strike Power, super impressive in his first 2 races sprinting, so it'll be interesting to see him stretch out. There is pace, as you mentioned, so this is going to be a test on a few levels for Strike Power. Marconi, I expect him to get better. He actually drops down in distance to a mile 16th, but maybe if that pace is real fast, like you think it may be, Marconi's late run can be even stronger. Might not be the best track for him to do his thing, but if he gets a 45-109, hey, he should be running too. But Good Magic's race to win for sure. I think there will be disappointment if he doesn't win. But it's a race that looks like if he comes back as good as we expect him, he will be clearly the one to beat. Matt, you mentioned the race, the Howell's Hope, recently that was won by Good Magic's entry or workmate economic model. Irish Warcry ran a good, respectable second place in there in his first race back. And we lost a really nice horse, Send It In, of course, just had a terrible injury on the far turn. Awful to see, and Send It In was a talented gelding, New York-bred gelding. So I want to say rest in peace to a nice horse, Send It In, that we lost Saturday. On that slightly somber note, can you turn it around with your parting shot, something a little bit more upbeat for us?
Like we've been saying in this show, it's March, and it's time for us to find out some more solid information about these Kentucky Derby runners. The points are up. The spots in the gate are going to start filling. So let's enjoy the Derby Trail.
Absolutely. Let's thank our producer and our excellent producer, Brett Workman, our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. As always, folks, I thank you for watching every week. We get so many nice notes. We appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation. We are looking forward happily to talk about Good Magic's return and then preview a huge weekend the following week on the Kentucky Derby Trail. We'll see you right here on HorseCenter next week.